So we're doing Maddtober all this month, and what Maddtober is it's just Inktober, but with like a maladaptive daydreaming themed prompt list. Works exactly the same way. Use the prompts to make an ink drawing every day of the month. And then if you end up posting it, just like hashtag it with Maddtober or Maddtober 2021. I did this last year. I didn't make it all the way through. There's a playlist on my channel somewhere. So hopefully this year we'll be making it all the way through. And all we do is draw and talk about MD. By the way, I'm not an artist, so like don't expect anything more than stick figures. Today's the first day and the prompt is difficult. So I don't know. I don't really think these things ahead. It's kind of better if it's off the cuff anyway, I think. Just first impressions, you know? So difficult. Like, what's difficult about maladaptive daydreaming? Like, there's so many ways you could go with that. But I think essentially it's going to end up just coming down to like the cycle, like the vicious cycle. And I know what it looks like. All right, I know what the model in the papers looks like. So I don't know if this is cheating, but we're just going to draw that. This might be cheating. So it starts with the trait. And the trait is just that we're born with an innate trait, the capacity to do this. Some people have it, some people don't. Those that have it are the immersive daydreamers. Some of those will eventually turn into maladaptive daydreamers if, something happens. So it's not exactly typical daydreaming, but it's also not like inherently unhealthy. It's just a thing that some people can do and some people can't. Some people have the trait and some people don't. And then it goes down to discovery. Discover. Don't judge me. Discovery. This usually happens when we're young. You hear people say a lot like, oh, I've been doing this since I was 5 years old, since I was a baby, since as long as I can remember, I've always been like this. And the pacers too. They mostly seem to find that, or not always pacing, but swinging or something else. They seem to find that in early childhood too. So you just sort of end up growing up, well, not everybody, but a lot of people doing this. So some people might think that it's perfectly normal that everyone does it. And some people might find out that no, the people around them don't do it and end up feeling really alone in it and wondering what it is. And because it's with you from such a young age, a lot of people are hesitant, even if they are maladaptive daydreamers, to recognize it. Not hesitant maybe, but they just don't sort of put the pieces together that it's a problem because, they've always been like that. And even after you recognize it's a problem, you may hesitate to want to address it because it is such a part of your personal identity. You've had it for so long. You've had it since you were so young that it's just a part of who you are. Like, how do you even live without that? Like, that doesn't even make sense to just cut off an aspect of you. It seems ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. I mean, nobody's saying don't ever daydream again in your whole life. They're just saying, get healthy with it, or at least I hope that's what they're saying. If that's not what they're saying, then I don't know. I would be hesitant to try out their advice because never daydreaming just isn't. Daydreaming is what humans do. Like, it's not advisable to just not do it. Anyway, after discovery, we have reward, which I spelled it wrong. WAR. Reward. Got a little ahead of myself there. Did the G too early. It'll be fine. And just make that R really robust so it stands out. Right. There we go. This is going well. So once you discover you can do it, it is very satisfying. It's a rewarding experience. It's rewarding emotionally. It's entertaining. It's fun. It just feels good. A lot of times it's a perfectly adaptive and helpful coping skill for anything you might be going through. And obviously we're talking about maladaptive daydreamers here. So a lot of them might have something that they need help coping with. And MD starts as a way to do that, a really satisfying way to do that. It's effective, After reward, we have yearning. I didn't have space for the ing. Tale as old as time. Something feels good, you start to crave it. Doesn't matter what it is. Junk foods, cigarettes, heroin, daydreaming. We just like things that we like, Feels good. Eventually, you may begin to yearn for it. And when you yearn too much for it, when you start putting off other things to do it, ignoring the other things in your life because of that craving, because of that yearning. What you end up with is maladaptive daydreaming. If you are using it as a coping skill, it's probably outlasted its ability to be helpful in your life. It's now more of a net negative than a positive. You may still be using it as an effective coping skill, but the cons, at this point, the cons are outweighing the pros. So you start putting things off, and that leads us to, actually put that way too high. I don't think I'm going to have space for everything. Isolation. Oh, N. The N doesn't fit. All right, isolation. This is the vicious cycle part. This is where you start blowing people off to MD, so they stop inviting you places. You neglect your relationships, they neglect you back. So then you get sad and you daydream some more, which isn't helping you build anything real. It's just making you alone more. And on and on and on. You're sad because you're alone, so you daydream. You're alone because you daydream. It's a nasty ass cycle to break out of. Man, I really whiffed it on the end here. Isolation. So this one, it's not just a one-way arrow. It goes both ways. It's like this little loop within the bigger mechanism. MD makes you isolated, isolation makes you daydream. There's another loop in here, another like side loop that they sort of put down here. Don't worry, we'll get to that empty spot in a minute. There's a lot of loops within this loop. It's actually, it's not complicated. It's not complicated to like understand, but there's more than one thing going on here. So you can actually read the paper that this comes from. I think this comes from the childhood antecedents paper. And that will explain it all a lot better if you want to look that up. Maybe if I remember, I'll put a link like down in the description. All right, so you become a maladaptive daydreamer, and then this little loop leads to shame. I mean, you know, who hasn't felt that? The shame from MD can come from a lot of places. Maybe you're ashamed of not being protective. Maybe you're ashamed because you feel like daydreaming is childish. You can't seem to keep up with your peers. You can't seem to handle things. You're just ashamed, not taking care of your life or of avoiding things or of not keeping up with peers. You know, whatever it is, it makes you ashamed. It makes you want to hide this. And there's a weird stat. I don't know if it's still true because there's like a lot of awareness that's come out since the stat was published that said like 80% of maladaptive daydreamers have never told a single person about their maladaptive daydreaming. Like not even like a therapist or anything. Like they've just never discussed it. We talk about it, I mean, a lot, obviously. I have a whole channel dedicated to it. I talk about it a ton online, but I don't do this in real life. Like in real life, maladaptive daydreamers aren't actually this vocal about their daydreaming. The shame leads to failure. I think I spelled that right. You know, I'm not actually this poor at spelling until I turn on a camera, until I need to like spell something in front of someone. If I were just sitting here alone, I wouldn't have made all these mistakes. Failure. Okay, you try to address your problems, but especially early on, and especially with no like treatment protocol, there's not a lot of studies, and none that have been published, I think, specifically about treatment. Well, I guess there have been a few. There was a case study on like a guy named Ben, who had like taken ADHD medications, I think, but they didn't help. They actually made it worse. There's a case study on OCD, or not on OCD, on maladaptive daydreaming, where she ended up taking an OCD medication because she had an extensive family history of OCD, although she herself didn't have OCD. And that helped. That like cured it. Like cured. Managed. So this is actually failure, or failure to stop MDing. Failure sounds like such a mean word. I'm just trying to do these in like one word things so you can see them easily. The words in the actual paper are actually longer. I don't think this isn't titled failure in the original like image. It's like unsuccessful mitigation or unsuccessful treatment attempts, I think it is, which is actually I think one of the items in the symptom domain of the diagnostic criteria for MD is like you've tried to stop before. And most people without support, they fail. This is one of the reasons that like Maddtober is even a thing. It's to spread awareness, any kind of awareness we can, because it's important, because this is so common that it's in the fucking diagnostic criteria, because people, we just don't have access to things that can help us. And it just leads to more maladaptive behavior. And then this square up here, I told you we'd get back to it. I'm a man of my word. This one is trauma. I should probably write my words and then put them in boxes, but we're already at the end here. So trauma is not a prerequisite to like having maladaptive daydreaming. About 1/4 of maladaptive daydreamers have a history of childhood abuse or neglect or trauma. But the other 75%, they report happy childhoods, uneventful childhoods, no trauma to speak of. So it's super common not to have any trauma. But, you know, even so, 25%, that's 1/4 of our population. That's a lot of people. And they're definitely, you know, they're an at-risk population for not just maladaptive daydreaming, but for like a lot of stuff. And so, you know, they might need a bit extra of our attention, our traumatized brothers and sisters, you know, gotta take care of them. And this box actually goes both way. Trauma can lead to the discovery of MD, which kickstarts this whole cycle. And it can also lead one to be isolated, which kickstarts this cycle. And it just adds, you know, that extra layer of suck that makes an already difficult friggin' cycle that much more hard to break out of. So yeah, that's it. I know I promised you stick figures. Maybe the next one, but you know, when I sat down and I was like, what's difficult about MD? And my mind just like went to all the things that are difficult about it. You know, talking about it, that's super difficult. I've been in the MD community for years, and it's still hard for me to talk to like real life people about it without feeling really stupid just saying it out loud. You know what I mean? Like that's really difficult. Just the day to day, like fighting the yearning. That's difficult. It's difficult to draw yourself back once you're gone. It's difficult to want to draw yourself back. Finding motivation, really difficult. Like you got to have a good motivator to bust these arrows apart. That actually makes me think of something to add here. We'll put right in the middle here. Let's make this graphic a little more palatable here. Here's my motivation to get better. There we go. My son kickstarted all this. Like I knew I was a maladaptive daydreamer for a while. And I put effort, you know, into managing it and stuff, but having children is what really lit a fire under my ass, you know, because I'm just not going to be the parent that I want to be. I don't want to, you know, go to my kid's wedding and realize that I just never spent time with him as a child or played with him. I don't want him to be at his wedding, you know, going through the guest list, going like, do we really have to invite my mom? She was never even there. So like, oh my God, that'd be awful. Like I don't want to misrepresent this. Like my motivation to get better is to be a better person specifically for my son, but like, it's not contingent on my son. Like your wellness is not somebody else's responsibility. You need to do it for yourself, not for someone else. My son was the motivation, but but the, you know, the deeper thing is that I want to get better to be the parent I want to be. I want to get better for my son. Like I do want to get better for my son, but it's me too. You know what I mean? That was the impetus. So anyway, yeah. Day 1, difficult. I think we did all right. I don't know. Drop in the comments. My dog is running around. So anyway, yeah, day 1, difficult. I think this went pretty well. I don't know. Do Maddtober. Draw me some stick figures. Not me. Draw us. Draw the whole community stick figures. It doesn't matter. Hashtag it Maddtober. And I don't know. Maybe drop in the comments like what you would put in this circle. We added this circle. This is our arrow buster. What's your motivation to bust apart this cycle? Go ahead and drop that. One word only. Okay, keep a theme here. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.